Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to my tutorial series on AEM Designer. Today we're going to be covering best practices for how to design an entire form to be as a table in order to make it, look more aesthetically pleasing and to preserve some aesthetic functionalities. Now, what we have here is a form that we've seen many times before in this tutorial series. So it's called the deviation report form, and as it stands, this form is not it's not formatted as a table. It's formatted, like any other form. We have a master page, we have some lines over here, we have some subforms, and this is all fine. But something that you might run into whenever you're dealing with like shape objects, in particular line objects like these, is whenever you expand out your form using expandable text fields, row objects, etc., you'll find that your line objects will not expand with the rest of the form. So suppose we want to put in a lot of information into the deviation number subform. So we can mash our enter key and it looks fine, but this looks a bit off here because the line object over here is not expanding to encompass the entire text field. Now, within Designer, while you can make a text field expand vertically to fill up the whole subform, you cannot do the same for a line object. And similarly, the rest of this content is spilling out of the borders of these lines. So these two lines on the left and right, these big long lines, they're within the master page, but the rest of the content is not. But the rest of the content is spilling beyond it because that's just how it is for this particular document because these lines cannot expand. And you see, it just does not look very professional. Even if it is functional, doesn't look very professional. So one way around this that I like is to design the form from the ground up as a table. So essentially what we would do is we would take all this information minus the deviation report form icon slash logo. We would take all this information and we would design it as a table so the lines in the middle and on the exterior would expand appropriately. And so I've already done this. Let me open up another file. hmm Okay, so here we are, and over here, notice done we've done pretty much what I've just said. Our hierarchy looks a bit different. We still have that logo subform on top, which just contains this rectangle object and this text object. But the rest of the content essentially is a table. So we have a table within our first row. The first row acts as our deviation number subform, so our text object and our text field. The second row acts as our affected materials subform. And even within here, we have our dynamic table. So we have a table within a table. Our third row is our event description subform, and so on. And let's see how this looks in action as we expand it out. So we'll go into our expandable table. We expand it, and notice the line expands to meet the growing, expanding text field. Similarly, as we add rows to this dynamic table, the lines over here expand. And notice the content does not spill out of the parent table, you could say. It doesn't spill out, so everything is still wrapped within lines, and it just looks a lot easier on the eye when it's like this. Like if you're working for a professional company designing forms, this aesthetic, this professional lookingness, it's very important. If stuff is spilling out of your parent table, it's just going to leave a bad impression on the person filling it out. It's going to make them think that the person who designed it just doesn't know what they're doing. But if you do know what you're doing, then your form is going to look lovely like this. Everything's going to be contained within its table. Nothing's going to spill out, and it's going to look nice. So that's a good best practice to perform when making your forms. So that's all there is to that. Next time, we're going to be designing forms from the ground up with flowed layouts and subforms in mind. And until then, take care.